Hey, how's everybody? You like rear ends as much as I like rear ends? Let's talk about rear ends in this episode. There we have this little tribute tee. It's a kit by Speedway Motors. Once again, they do not sponsor me in any way, shape, or form. Now that legal stuff's out of the way, let's talk about this rear end. So in this kit, I chose for the optional 9-inch quick or 9-inch rear end instead of the quick change rear end. It saved a little bit of money on there, about $2,000 and some change in there. But money's no object when you're building hot rods and your wife paying for it. So don't tell my wife about it, and I won't tell yours, and everything will be just right. So I've already had this rear end together one time. I had it in the vehicle. I did a little test fit and everything, and then that's when I decided to do the video series. So I blew it all apart and got it ready for paint. And I said to myself, that's when I recognized my voice, and I said, "Yeah, why did you blow this all apart when you got to make sure everything fits before you put paint to it?" So here we are. We're making sure everything's going to fit. We're going to talk about the disc brakes because that's the option I chose for it. Is this disc brakes instead of the drum brakes? Disc is the way to go anymore. So we're going to talk about disc brakes on here. We're going to talk about the how the rear suspension is set up. We're going to talk about Susie Dog wanting to play catch all the time in the shop. I got to get somebody to throw that ball for that. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to pull this body back off. And I see my son over there hiding. He's supposed to be cleaning the bathroom over there. But hey, Jacob, come over here and give me a hand. Give your daddy a hand picking this body up and setting it down. Then you can go ahead and clean that bathroom or play fetch with the dog or whatever else you were doing. So, okay, this is a wrap. We're going to go on three. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, lift. Here we go. Be careful, don't scratch anything. It's high dollar. This could be the next Riddler award. You just never know. There we go. Yeah. Got that around there. Let's set that down on the nose. Try not to scratch it. Keeps the body work at the minimum then if we don't scratch it. Take it easy now. I'm an old man. Got to take it down. There we go. Set that up on there. Hey, I really appreciate that. Okay, you can go back there and clean the bathroom or throw the ball for a dog, whatever you were doing. But I appreciate the help. Okay, so now we're going to come back around and we're going to get ready to set this rear end in place. Got all of our tools laid out, or not our tools, but I've got all our parts laid out. You see the U-bolts laying there. We got the friction shocks. You got the triangulated bars. You got the you got the radius rods laying there. So now we're going to talk about since we're talking about the radius rods, let's talk about these. So you got a ball joint goes on each end. One's left hand thread, the other one's right hand thread. That way it's easy to adjust. On this radius rod, you see a knurl mark on there. That usually indicates that's the left hand thread on that. I like to put those underneath the body. You won't see that knurl mark on there. It's just a little bit of hiding everything on there. So once that's painted, you probably wouldn't see the knurl mark anyway, but just in case you do, put that underneath the body. So what I like to do is go ahead and lay these parts out as they're going to go. And while I'm doing that, I think my boy Jacob's over there getting the floor jack, bringing it around because we'll just set this baby up on with the floor jack. So here he comes. Get old Susie Dog out of the way a little bit. She's still wanting to play ball there. So we'll get all this mess out of the way. It's just a little personal pet peeve with me to have everything right there where you need to have it when you go to put stuff together. That way you're not walking around the shop looking for it. And if you're like me, I mean, a squirrel runs by and you lose track of it, what you're trying to do. So it just helps to have all the parts in one spot. So now we'll just pull this rear end out of the way here. We're going to set it up on the floor jack. If you guys don't have these little carts, these little furniture moving carts, they are handy as a hip pocket. So I suggest, you can go down to the local Horrible Freight and pick a couple up. They come in real handy for stuff like this. So let's figure out how we're going to get this up on the jack. I'm going to have to lift it all. Oh no, look here, Jacob comes over there. I got it for you, Dad. Look at them muscles on that kid. So we'll slide this buggy spring out of the way. And on this buggy spring, you got a pin that goes all the way through it there, and it's got a hole in the top. So it's pretty simple. You just line the pin up with the hole, wiggle it around a little, make sure it goes in, and you're home free. So with that being said, now go ahead and put a little pressure on there. And you'll get your U-bolts and your plates. We'll each take a side and put those on. Now I believe this is a 3/4 socket that'll go on this. So that makes it a 1/2 inch fine thread bolt on there. So we'll take that, and I goofed up and used the C-elastic bolts on, or nuts on this. So I'll just go ahead and tighten them up, and then when I blow it apart, I'll get a couple more new C-elastic nuts on that. That way it's a good lock nut, and I don't have to worry about, once it's torqued and everything, coming undone. So I like to take that little 1/4 inch impact, run those up, 3/4 socket. Okay, now that we have those on there, so once again, the knurled end usually indicates the left-hand thread on there. Got these little inserts that go in. They just slip inside the heim joint there. And what that does is when it goes into the frame bracket, it allows it to stay centered. That's a very good thing to do. You don't want those to get in a bind your suspension up. That's when people wreck. So they just snap into place, slide into that bracket, and that bolt drops on through. And the other end, you just do a little minor adjustments on there, get that bolt to go through, and it threads into that bracket that you bolted onto the rear end and on the third member. So there you go. You got one side done on there. So now we're going to do the other side, and it's just a repeat on how you did the first side. So I hope you guys are enjoying what you're looking here. If you do, go ahead and hit that share button and tell your friends about it. Hit that follow button. We might get a sponsorship or two. You just never know. So as you can see, pretty easy peasy on there. Now this will have to be all measured out and make sure the rear end's centered and squared and with the front end and everything. So that'll come after everything's painted on there. So there you can see that. It's pretty simple. Nuts go on the bottom of there. So I'm not going to tighten them all the way down because this is just a trial fit and everything. So I will run the impact and snug them up a little bit. That 1/2 inch bolt, that should get torqued about 65 pounds when everything's said and done. So let's step back and we'll hook this radius rods up. So I got them hooked up to the outside of the frame there. There's two different ways you can hook them up, the right way and the wrong way. The correct way is hook them up to the inside of that bracket. If you hook them up to the outside of that bracket, when you go to sit the body on there, the body's going to hit that radius rod and it's not going to allow it to fit all the way down. So if you're wondering how I know that, just ask me how I know that. Because I did that the first time when I started mocking this up, before I decided to do this video series. So, it's pretty easy, not too complicated. So then the friction shock will go on. They went on just like the front ones did. Pull some tape off here, and I might as well just go ahead and tell you how that goes on. So it's already got the mounting bracket for the shock. I guess the shock arm is what you would call it. It's already mounted to the rear end. So the shocks did come mounted to the frame, but like I said, I've taken them off and now we're putting them back on. So you got a fiber disc, then you got the metal shock arm, you got another fiber disc, and then you got the outside metal. It goes in that little tab there. Your little tensioner, star washer thingamajob. That goes on there with your flat washer, then your 3/8 elastic nut. When you tighten that up, it allows you to have more or less shock action on there. So one thing you can do is adjust your pinion angle by making this radius rod a little longer, a little shorter. I think it's 3 degrees is what you want. I have to check my book on that. So that's one way to adjust the pinion angle on this. You got to have that correct. You're going to get vibration in your drive shaft. drivetrain and everything. So now I always like to snug that friction shock up a little bit. So let's head on over to the other side and see what Jacob's kind of progress he's making on this. So he's a little bit behind me, but he's doing good. He's hooking that friction shock up. You know, it's a little father-son project. I just absolutely love the time in the shop with him. Anytime you can spend the time with your family in the shop building cool stuff and your wife pays for it, well, I tell you what, that's a dream come true anymore. So we'll check out his work here. Yeah, it seems a little bit tight. Loosen that up, son, a little bit there, son. Check it out a little bit. Yeah, might need a little bit more. There you go. That's a little bit too loose now. Tighten that up a little more. Come on, just like if you were a rigger, build her tight, tight or loose. Yeah. Really doesn't matter because this is just mock-up, but you can see where we're going with this. So there we have it. We've got the rear end installed temporarily. Of course, we're going to blow it all apart for paint and everything. So one thing I would like to say is these lock nuts that go on there, that is a must-have. Now, I didn't have all my lock nuts on. All the left-hand ones, all the left-hand threaded ones were on back order, and I just didn't put the right-hand threads on the smaller triangulated up here. But those will be put on. It is a must. So let's talk about measurements now. So what I like to do is, I'll take a tape measure, make sure that your radius rods are the same length. I just go from grease zert to grease zert. That tells you where the center to center line is on everything. So I'll take one measurement from one side and I'll go on to the other side and I'll take the measurement, twist my rod in or out, make sure they fit, and measure my drive shaft, make sure it's the center line on the chassis and everything to make sure that rear end is centered. So, that is a very important part because you don't want to dog leg it going down the road. Okay, so now you can also do the same on the, triangulated bar. I measure from the back side of one bolt to the back side of the other bolt. That pretty well gets you centered on that. So just make sure both of those bars are the same length, and you should be really close. It's going to take some fine tuning once you get it all assembled and everything, but this will get you in the ballpark and get you, a really good start on it. So here's an overall view of it. It's going to have a little short drive shaft in there. We're going to hit the brakes on the next video of this. I like to keep this around 10 minutes, and we're getting on 13. So here's a word from our sponsor. And our sponsor this week is brought to you at the Southside Airport. It's Rick's Toddler and Aviation Diner, where the food tastes the same going down as it does coming up.